They say love is blind, but I never understood how blinding that ignorance could be until I was betrayed not only by the woman I fell in love with, but also by the people I considered her family, and who should have valued me as much as she did. As for romantic relationships, it all started quite typically. I met Isabella at my friend's engagement party. She was graceful, polite, and had a smile that broke down all my defenses. We liked each other right away. She had a contagious laugh, a genuine affection in her eyes, and we quickly developed strong chemistry. Within a few months, we were engaged. My friends said we were moving too fast. My sister warned me not to get burned. Even my mother, who had never interfered in my personal life for many years, was concerned. But I was too caught up in the moment, too enchanted by her. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't notice the warning signs. The first warning sign appeared quite early, like a faint whisper in the wind. Isabella said she wanted to spend a lot of time with her family. She lived with her parents and two older brothers in a spacious house on the outskirts of town. They were polite, but cold. Whichever room I walked into, they would start talking animatedly in their native language, giggling and looking at each other, while I sat there like an idiot. At first, I decided it was a cultural difference. I even felt guilty for feeling uncomfortable. They just feel more comfortable speaking their own language. Isabella tried to reassure me. They're shy about speaking English. She said it so sincerely that I even started to believe her. I wanted to believe her. And then there was the question of housing. In Isabella's world, for several years or even longer, the bride and groom lived with the bride's family. It's our little way of taking care of each other, she said. My parents are old, and it's very important to them. I hesitated. I had just bought an apartment in the city center that I wanted to make our first home together. But the look in her eyes, full of emotion, broke my resistance. I justified it all. That's how love works. It makes you turn logic on its head, so you can cling to an illusion. Eventually, the conversation turned to money. Isabella suggested opening a joint bank account. It'll be easier to plan the wedding, she said. And when we live together, we'll have to share bills. At first glance, it made sense. But there was something off about her insistence. She wanted access to my accounts before we had even set a date. When I said it would be better to wait until after the wedding, she looked annoyed for a moment, but then smiled even wider. The mask became a smile. And after a while, even stranger things started happening. When I visited her, her mother would often take me aside, and they would talk quietly in the kitchen. I remember someone saying my name in the middle of this quick conversation that I couldn't understand. They stopped when I walked in, laughing and smiling too broadly. At first, I chalked it up to wedding talk, but my doubts grew like weeds that I could no longer ignore. One night, I caught Isabella photographing my documents, tax returns, mortgage statements. She said they were needed by the wedding planner, who was putting together a financial portfolio for the vendors. It made sense, but something inside me screamed that it wasn't true. I started writing everything down, every strange moment, every unusual conversation. I even resorted to using an old phone when I was away and sent the recordings via satellite. I didn't want to be like that, cynical, distrustful. But I had this sick feeling that something terrible was happening right in front of me. Then I caught them. There were a lot of words in Isabella's language on the recording, so I asked Sofia Ramos, a colleague who is fluent in that language, for help. I asked, "Allah, I need to translate personal file." And she replied, "In my bourbon, that means spot on." She nodded as I spoke, but I could feel her raising her eyebrows as I explained. And then she stopped listening to the audio recording halfway through. "I don't know how to tell you this," she said, "but it's really bad." My stomach clenched. Then she turned the clip back on and translated it for me word for word. Isabella and her mother whispered to each other, discussing how to frame him. Maybe I should marry him quickly so that half of my savings would become family property. They discussed past targets, like how her cousin had pulled a similar stunt last year. "He's perfect," Isabella said in the recording. "He doesn't suspect a thing. We'll prepare everything in advance." I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor had fallen out beneath me. I didn't sleep all night listening to those recordings with Sofia Ramos and learned 10 times more than I wanted to know. Isabella's family was part of a complex scam. A complicated web of lies designed to trap wealthy men like me. The method was as follows: quickly gain trust, push for a quick engagement, gain control of the money, and withdraw assets, supposedly for family needs. I felt like a fool. Everything I thought we had, every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" whispered in my ear, was a lie. The next day, I called a lawyer. I gave him the records, the statements I had kept, and everything I had collected. He advised me to go to the police. I did, and I told him everything. A few days later, an investigation was launched, and I learned that I was not the first victim of such a scheme. Investigators said that Isabella's relatives had been involved in similar schemes in the past. After the police issued a broad appeal, at least 3 people called to say that the remains were likely those of their loved ones. But they were unable to confirm this with DNA or other identifiers in court documents reviewed by the New York Times. 2 of them were cleaned out after their retirement accounts were emptied, and their credit was ruined. 1 even attempted suicide. It was an emotional war, because the betrayal was not just about money. These were not just random con artists. These were people who had built trust on love, who smiled as they made plans to destroy other people's lives. 2 weeks later, Isabella was taken into custody. I watched from the courtroom as she sat at the table with an impassive face, no longer the sweet woman I once loved. One by one, her family members were called to the stand. Her mother, her brothers, even her cousin. The charges were numerous and extensive: fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and in Isabella's case, immigration violations that resulted in a deportation order. I didn't cry. I thought I would cry later, but I never did. I just felt empty. It was as if my heart had been used for target practice, and no one had even bothered to clean up the shards. For several months after the false diagnosis, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. Therapy helped. Other victims helped even more. We shared some of our stories, and found comfort in the fact that no, we weren't idiots. We had been targeted by people whose job was to deceive. I moved out of the apartment Isabella called too lonely to a new place with big windows and warm lighting. I got a dog, a golden retriever named Sunny, to remind me every day that unconditional love still exists in the world. I even started dating, carefully convincing myself that love could be real without being exploitative. And most importantly, I learned something. I realized that you don't have to give in to your instincts in the name of love. It doesn't make you silent. It doesn't make you feel guilty. And it doesn't take anything away from you. Love elevates, love protects, love tells the truth. I think that's how I feel about him now. And when I reflect on what happened, I don't feel ashamed. I feel proud. Proud that I followed my heart even when everyone around me said, "Don't follow your heart." Proud that I took action before the situation got out of hand. And proud that I was able to pick myself up after being broken into pieces. Not all scars are visible. Some remain in our decisions, in the walls we build, and in the vulnerability we hide so carefully. But scars also mean survival. They mean you survived what was meant to destroy you. And now you are stronger because of that experience. Isabella was a storm, but I survived her. The storm has subsided, and in this silence, I feel good. Real, honest peace. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's mine. And no one can ever take that away from me.